Hello guys, and welcome back to another CAFcast. Today we're taking a look at Fractal Design's Define R5. This is the brand new case that I've chosen for the X99 build, or how to build a YouTube PC video series, which you can check out in the link description. If you've come there from that video, then fantastic, welcome. If not, then you can go and check that out and see what other parts I chose to build a PC specifically for gaming and for YouTube editing as well. But for now, the case itself is the 5th iteration of the Define series and has been pretty much accepted as a benchmark standard for decent cooling, but as well as decent silence. Now, silence when you're recording is one of the most important things to make sure that you have, because obviously the last thing that you want to appear on your videos is a lot of PC noise in the background. If you're using a decent microphone that picks up a specific point of sound, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But if you're doing ASMR videos like some of the videos that I do, it's always very important to try to maintain as quiet a PC as you can. One of the other reasons that I went for this case rather than something like the Cooler Master Silencio 652 or one of the Corsair Obsidian series cases was that I wanted to use 140mm fans rather than 120. And in fact, I should have just down here an example of the fans that we're going to be using, and there'll be another video on my channel with these. 7 of them we have to try out for this system. These are going to be used in this system, and this is the best case that I could find that could fit fans that are this large. I mean, you can actually see how big they are in comparison to, let's have a look here, in comparison to a 120mm fan. There's quite a significant difference, so hopefully we'll be able to take in more depth video about fans and cooling and stuff a little bit later on, and including obviously building this system itself. And then once we've actually put everything in it in the X99 build, we'll get a chance to have a look at some of the cooling specs, some of the temperatures that we get out of the system under idle and under load. But first, let's get unboxing. So I've just quickly taken the case out of its outer packaging just to show you guys itself, because obviously that's going to take quite a lot of effort to take out. The case itself has actually done pretty well here. Just having a look, the packaging foam is pretty tough. It seems to have done pretty well. In fact, as you can see here, the packaging foam itself has actually cracked on this part. I'm not sure if you can see that here, but that means that it's doing its job, which is pretty good. I don't mind about how the outer packaging looks, as long as the case itself is okay. It does come with some fans and things, but the main parts inside, obviously, apart from the case itself, which we'll take a look at in more detail in a moment, is a instruction manual, which has, in fact, it's just a pamphlet of all the information about the different various systems that you can get from Fractal Design, and also some of their power supplies and fans and things, other things that the company makes. From what I understand, or from the experiences that I've had with Fractal, I haven't seen any sort of negative products that they've made at all. So, I mean, you should be okay with anything. The main thing that I did was went for different manufacturers for my fans. And as I said before, there are a couple of fans that are actually inside here, which we'll go through. You also get a little faulty product information thing to say, rather than contacting your reseller or Fractal Design to get some support, they're asking for you to give support straight away, or for them to give you support straight away. And then there is actually a step-by-step guide about how to build a PC using this case, which is very, very cool. The book itself is actually pretty well laid out. The bits and pieces seem to be pretty consistently and pretty nicely done. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. It seems to be, it talks about putting the board in, putting the CPU on the board first and the RAM, then putting the motherboard plate at the back, and make sure the standoffs are all done, inserting the board. Pretty good, actually. I'm pretty pleased with that. That seems to be quite a nice addition that they've done there. So we'll hang on to that. We'll put the pamphlet and bits and pieces back in here for now, and take this foam away as well. Onto the important stuff, the case itself. So, There we go, this is it. This is the case, and it is absolutely outstanding. It is slightly wider than most cases, slightly wider than the Obsidian 950 or the 900D, whichever one the silent oriented one is. And it is also slightly wider than the other silent built case, the Cooler Master Silencio 652S. That is by no means an exhaustive list of all the quiet cases that you can get, but those are the ones that I know about myself because I've experienced them all. It has, as you can see, plenty of ventilation on the sides of the case here and on the other side as well, with a brushed kind of metal finish. I'm sure that you guys are watching some sort of fantastic B-roll video right now of the brushed aluminum finished plastic. It's not actually metal on the front here, but that's fine because it doesn't really matter whether or not you're using plastic or metal. Apart from obviously quality, I suppose, is the only thing, but the actual case itself seems to be very nicely built. The actual door itself can be oriented in this way, and it can also be flipped over by using the provided hinges into the other direction as well. So if you prefer, you can have your door come up like this, or you can also have it go the other way as well if you like to have your case done the other way. Personally, I have my PC case on my left, which means that having it this way is exactly the way that I want it to be. So inside the front of the case, which I will orient next to or closer to you guys, we actually have a large filter on the front here, which actually has the filtration built directly onto the front of there, with quite a nice design actually. Again, there's a large volume of through flow for air to be able to pass through, which is really, really awesome. And obviously the fans themselves can be placed inside there. You can see that they do provide you with one fan as well, as standard in the front, and I believe actually one in the back, which we'll take a larger look at once we actually get inside the case. But that is pretty cool. It seems to be quite just nicely built, to be honest with you. I've had experience with a few different cases, and this does feel like a nicely designed case. On the front as well, whilst I'm showing you some video, we have a fan controller, which is for the inbuilt into the actual case itself, which you could use if you prefer to control your own fans, as opposed to letting your motherboard control it, which is what I'll personally be doing. We also have headphone and microphone port, a reset switch, a nice satisfying power button, which is one of the sort of on-off style clicks it feels like, and then we have USB 2 and USB 3, 2 of each on the front. Moving around to the side of the case. Moving around to the side of the case, we have a Moduvent on the side here. I'm not actually sure how you get these off, so we'll have to look in more detail when we get the case open itself, but they are places where you can add or remove fans. The same thing goes for the front of the case here as well, the top of the case, sorry, here as well. We'll look at that in more detail once we get the side off. The benefit of this case, or one of the significant benefits of this system over the previous generation, is that the Define R5 has obviously thumb screws that are in, like any normal case would, to hold the panel on. But also, once you remove those, has a latch which you can actually just press down, and then the actual panel comes off completely. So you don't even need these thumb screws to be on if you're not worried about anybody gaining access to your computer, if it's just going to be in your house, for example. Then all you need to worry about is actually using the little latch on here, which is really, really cool. The panel itself, as you can see, I'm sure is the same for the next one as well, has this lovely sound deadening foam. It's not too spongy, but it is made of the right stuff, so you should find that no sound is going to be able to move through there. The actual panel itself is an aluminium construction, or aluminum construction for you Americans out there, and does feel to be, again, really solidly well built. If you want to, you can take that side window out as well, so you can put a fan in, and there is a windowed version of this case as well. Personally, I have my cases tucked into a little sort of wind tunnel part of my desk, so I don't have any need for a window at the side of my case, so I would rather have the optimal kind of sound deadening foam on the rather than a window itself. Moving into the case, as you guys can see, we have quite a number of things. I'll just move this around slightly so you can see. There is an absolutely fantastic amount of drive opportunities for you. We're going to be using an M.2 SSD, which is going to be plugging in directly to the motherboard, and also 3 SSDs. We're going to be using one 256 gig drive for Adobe files and 2 RAID 01 terabyte drives for recording onto. So we are going to need to keep this cage at the bottom here, but the fantastic thing about this case is these can all actually be removed and changed around as and when you want to. So what I'm going to do, I don't think I can do it without a screwdriver to take out the bottom panel here, but I can show you guys some footage of that once I've actually built the system, is you can remove all of these. You can remove the panel, the optical bays and stuff, and then you can just have your drives, which are just here on the top in where the optical drives would normally be. So it's a really nice way of sort of tucking things out of the way. The drives themselves are of a metal construction and have all the rivets and parts built into them to be able to take anything from the 3.5-inch rotary hard drives to the 2.5-inch SSDs that you can see the screw mounts for in the center. And they just simply go in through like that. The rubbering that is in for the grommets is actually very, very nice as well. It feels pretty solid, and you could bend that for days and it doesn't feel like it's going to be going anywhere or staying in place or anything like that. All the cabling is black as well, which is very, very nice. I'll be separating that out as we do the construction and the build of the computer, which you'll see at the end of this video. And then we finally have a refine little box of various screws for standoffs, the standoff tool, which is very useful actually. A little standoff tool in here, which allows you to not have to worry about using regular spanners or anything like that, because the standoffs are actually an inverse thread, and they have a sort of a wrench part around the outside, or something that you would put a wrench over and sort of tighten up. But it includes this standoff tool, which I'll probably again show you in a little while, which lets you just use a Phillips head screwdriver to screw those standoffs in, which is really, really useful. Front fan screws, optical drive screws, 2.5-inch drive screws, 3.5-inch drive screws, and obviously a good few cable ties as well, which is always very, very useful. So those are all the parts inside there. The last thing we want to do is take a look at the other side, and obviously the rear as well. Just while I'm in here, actually, I think the way that you actually remove these modu vents is by some small plastic catches that it has on the inside upper part of the motherboard, the actual case itself. And as you can see, these modu vent panels themselves can be removed 1, 2, or 3 if you want to, but for optimal silence, it's best to keep them on, which is what I'm going to be doing. I don't want to take these off at all. I want them to stay on the system itself, because we're going to be having our radiator for our CPU cooler actually on the front intake, with a bottom intake as well to negate for that static pressure resistance from the radiator, with a single exhaust on the back. And I'm hoping that's going to be a really optimal fan design. But anyway, carrying on, we'll put the panel back on here, which is actually nice and straightforward because it's on a rail kind of design, which is great. So we need to just make sure that we put it in through the front first, I believe, and then just that little catch at the back, and we're done. Nice and simple. That's the first time I've done that, and you can see how nice and easy that was. We have those screws, but we may as well keep them out, seeing as we're building a computer today. Now on the back, things are pretty standard as usual. We have a space for a 120 or 140mm fan on the rear here. Once again, Fractal have already provided you with one, but we're going to be replacing all of our fans with our Noctua. Let's have a look here. NFA14s, PWMs, for anybody who's interested. They also, one of the really cool features about this rear fan mount here is they have actually got some little sliders, which means that you can raise or lower your exhaust fan to accommodate for top-mounted radiators if you want to. And the top-mounted radiators themselves don't take up the entire width of the top port. There are slight sort of standoffs to the front or the window side of the case to allow you to be able to add and modify radiators as you see fit in the top. Again, that's not something we're going to be doing today, but it does mean that you can put the fan on the back in the most optimal position that you see fit, and I think personally I'll probably be putting it nearest the top, I expect, to make sure that all the really hot air that's rising into the top of the case here will be able to be exhausted. We also have a side exhaust as well, because some cases obviously you can have exhausts on the side here. Plenty of slots here. Now the one thing to bear in mind with this case is it does not support eATX officially. There are some people who on some forums and stuff who have mentioned that they've been able to squeeze eATX boards into here, but if you're using something like an Asus Republic of Gamers board or even a workstation board or something like that, you really need to double check that it can fit in before you purchase this case. One of the small negatives about this case is that you can't have eATXs built into here, which is a bit of a shame. But we're using an X99 Deluxe, which is a regular ATX board, so we're actually going to be okay there, fortunately. And obviously there is a mount at the bottom here for the power supply, which is where you obviously would normally find that built into a system. And finally, on the back of the system as well, whilst I remember, there is obviously the front-mounted, now this is really cool, front-mounted filter that goes all the way to the back of the system. So no messing about having to take the back filter out and take your whole system all the way out, anything like that. When you're running the system and you need to start hoovering it and bits and pieces like that, take this whole thing out, give it a quick hoover or a vacuum if you're from a different country that doesn't say hoover, and then you can just slide that back in again, which hopefully I'll be able to do on camera for you. And it just goes straight back in again, nice and simple. Really, really happy with the design of this case. They've obviously spent a lot of time working on this. Now, the last thing as well is that the other side of the case does have these thumb screws that have the non-falling out. I don't actually know what the name for it is, but the thumb screws themselves don't actually fall out of this case, which is really, really cool, as you can see here. If we open this up, we're going to slide this backwards ever so slightly, and the actual thing comes out really nicely. Once again, a huge piece of sound deadening foam, which again is the same kind of material. It feels really nice and really solid, which is great to see. The other really cool thing, and the last cool thing about this case, apart from the cable routing, which if I move the case around again ever so slightly, you should be able to see all this nice cable routing here with these Velcro straps, which you can use, and are really nice actually. Very, very nice little design there. Is also there are two SSD risers on the back of the motherboard, which obviously you can use if you want to, if you have the need to only need two SSDs or are only using one SSD and one M.2 SSD built into your board itself. You have the ability to actually stealth those on your system by putting them onto these little risers that you can see here. I assume that they have spent some time thinking about the heat that SSDs produce, which usually is not a significant amount, so it is a pretty good place to have it. Personally, because I'm running 3 SSDs, I'm going to have them all on that single 3-mount cage that you can see at the bottom of the computer here, that I'm going to actually place in the top, and you'll see that in more detail once we've built the system. So, for now guys, I'm going to take it away and we will do a final recap of this case once I have had a chance to build a system inside it, and I'll show you a couple of highlights right now. So I'll see you guys shortly. So, now that we've actually had a chance to install a PC inside this case, how does it fare? Well, it is probably the best case I have ever used, and that's saying something. It beats the Corsair that I've used for a long time now, the Obsidian series, out of the water, because it just is so flexible. Now, because I've got a front-mounted 280mm radiator, I had to take out everything. I can still have an optical drive bay installed in here if I wanted to have some hop-swap 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives, but I don't really need to. I've got everything installed in the stealth covers in the back of the computer. 2 SSDs are inside the stealth covers, the two 1TB, and the 256GB, there's so much room in the back that it's just sort of sitting in there. It's just sort of cornered in the back, secured with a little blue tack, and it works absolutely fine, which is fantastic to see. Installation was very, very straightforward. All the standoffs were provided and more than enough screws. I have screws for days now just hanging around ready to go. But I think we've done some really, really good stuff here. The only thing I'll say is that there could be some compatibility issues with some of the larger radiators, because the longer screws that they come with sometimes, there isn't very much clearance in between the front of the case and this plastic shroud here. And actually, whilst we were using the screws that came with the CPU cooler rather than the ones that came with the motherboard, with the case, sorry, we had to actually change those out because it was pushing the front of the case off of its hinges and away from the case itself, which was a very big shame. In terms of quietness, it is very, very good, and in terms of cooling, it is very, very good. There's a large amount of space at the front to be able to ventilate all the components that we have. The bottom part is amazing, especially having this one large filter that goes across the entire computer, and then having the adjustable fan on the back as well means that, in fact, I was able to do some really nice cable management tricks by using that. And there is a lot of space in the back to be able to make sure that you can cable tie pretty much anything that you want to, which is great. So this case is definitely going to be my daily driver for the foreseeable future, probably until they release the Define R6. I'm incredibly pleased with it. I think it's a fantastic build. I never go for sort of flashy over-the-top builds. All I want is decent cooling performance and decent quietness. I think those are the main things. The only thing, if I could have had one thing that perhaps I don't have, I would have loved the case to be ever so slightly longer. The power supply that I have means that I can't put 2 fans in the bottom here, and also there's not enough in the terms of the way that the screws connect to the case. They could do with longer sliders, so I could perhaps put the radiator higher up, where it's perhaps slightly more out of the way, so I could have a fan underneath this one just here. But that's just very small niggly points. Cable routing, excellent. Motherboard installation, excellent. Storage, excellent. Graphics card installation, excellent. It's just a fantastic build. So I think this is definitely one to put on your shortlist if you're considering a case that does both cooling and silence very efficiently. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget that you can like the video by clicking the like button, subscribe to make sure that you get told whenever new videos are coming out. And until next time, guys, don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'll see you all soon. Take care.
You've been watching the Cafcast. We hope you have enjoyed the show. Don't forget to check out all of our other videos. Oh, and be sure to subscribe to us if you like what you see. That way I'll know to make more and that you really like me. So, you've been watching the Cafcast. We hope you have enjoyed the show. Don't forget to check out all of our other videos.